In the Zr'eth expanse, where three stellar systems converge under the shadow of an ancient war, there existed a creature that had become legend. The Thrax called it the Culveth, a word that means, roughly, the hunger that cannot be sated. It was a bio-engineered monstrosity, created 10,000 years ago as the ultimate weapon. 16 meters from snout to tail, teeth like curved scythes, a creature capable of piercing through starship hull plating with its bare claws. For millennia, the Thrax kept it caged. It served as their greatest deterrent, their ultimate trump card. No other species dared challenge them while the Culveth lived. But the Thrax were growing old. Their empire was crumbling. And so they did what empires always do when they sensed their own decline. They invited others to see their power. They opened the gates. They invited representatives from across the galaxy to witness a feeding demonstration. Senators, military commanders, diplomats, all gathered in the observation deck of a fortified space station, separated from the Culveth's chamber by 3 meters of reinforced transparent aluminum. It was meant to be a warning, a statement. Look what we command. Do not test us. No one expected it to become a lesson. Among the witnesses was a human named Marcus Chun. He wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't a military strategist or a politician with carefully crafted words. He was a zoologist from Earth, a specialist in animal behavior and rehabilitation. The Alliance had sent him because, well, someone needed to send someone, and Marcus had drawn the short straw. He arrived on the station 3 days before the demonstration, nervous and underprepared. The Thrax reception was cold, clinical. They showed him schematics, kill records, battle footage of the Culveth tearing through fortifications and fleets alike. You understand, the Thrax commander said, a towering insectoid being named Kexthal, that you are witnessing our power. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. Marcus nodded, saying nothing. He'd learned that silence was often the best response when dealing with species that had forgotten how to listen. But during his tour of the station, something peculiar happened. He took a wrong turn, or perhaps the right one. He found himself standing outside the Culveth's holding chamber. The creature was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Massive, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But as Marcus watched from behind the safety barrier, something in its movements struck him. The way it paced. The way it threw itself against the walls of its enclosure. The way it roared, not in fury, but in something that sounded almost like desperation. It wasn't anger, Marcus realized. It was madness. 1,000 years in a cage, alone, fed only corpses through mechanical slots. Never interaction, never stimulation, never anything but the grinding monotony of captivity. A small alarm chimed on his wrist device. The demonstration was beginning. The observation deck was packed. Representatives from a dozen species lined the viewing windows. The Thrax commander stood at a podium, arms crossed, a satisfied smile on his mandibles. For your education, Kexthal announced, his voice booming through the speakers. We present the Culveth, 10,000 years of genetic perfection, an apex predator without rival in known space. And now it feeds. Below them, in an arena painted white and marked with measurement grids, a gate rose. The Culveth emerged slowly, its massive frame unfolding like a nightmare given flesh. Slit pupil eyes, black as void. Scales that caught and scattered light in sickly greens and grays. The creature's breathing was heavy, labored. When it moved, the floor itself seemed to tremble. Then, another gate opened. A live creature was released, some kind of large herbivore, domesticated, probably terrified. It stumbled into the arena, bleeding. The assembled dignitaries leaned forward, cameras focused. This was the moment they'd come to witness. The creature would die. The message would be sent. The Culveth's muscles coiled. His breathing quickened. Every ounce of its predatory programming activated. And then, Marcus made a decision that would echo through the galaxy. He moved toward the door of the observation deck. Where do you think you're going? A Vraxian diplomat demanded. Marcus didn't answer. He was already through the door. Alarms screamed to life. Security personnel moved to intercept him. but Marcus had already reached the corridor that led to the arena level. He was moving fast, moving with purpose, and something about his sheer confidence seemed to momentarily confuse the security systems. By the time they organized themselves, he was through. He had exactly seconds. Marcus burst through the final door and into the arena chamber itself, the space where the Culveth hunted. The creature's attention snapped toward him. Those black eyes, so ancient and empty, locked onto this small, fragile, utterly insignificant human. "Marcus," Kexthal's voice thundered from the speaker system. "You have made a fatal error." But Marcus wasn't looking at the creature with fear. He was looking at it with something else entirely. Understanding. He took a slow step forward, his hands held open at his sides. Palms up, unthreatening. He'd done this once before on Earth with a traumatized great ape, a silverback that had been kept in isolation for so long it had lost the ability to trust. The Culvetha's muscles tensed further. It took a step toward Marcus, and the ground buckled beneath its weight. Its jaws opened, revealing teeth that could pierce steel. From the observation deck above, every species present thought they were watching a suicide. And then Marcus did something that would later be described as either the bravest or the most foolish thing anyone had ever witnessed. He pulled out a protein bar from his pocket. Music softens slightly, introduces something almost melodic beneath the tension. In the silence that followed that action, the entire station seemed to hold its breath. Protein bar. A simple, mundane human snack. Blue wrapper. Standard issue from the Alliance Medical Bay. Marcus had grabbed a handful before leaving his quarters because he hadn't eaten breakfast. He opened the wrapper slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact with the creature. "I know," he said softly, his voice small in that vast chamber, but somehow carrying through the speakers to the observation deck above. "I know what it's like, to be trapped, to be shown only violence, to be kept as a weapon instead of seen as something more." The Culveth made a sound, a low rumble that started in its chest. Marcus took another step forward. "They told me not to feed you," he continued, his voice steady. "They told me you were nothing but hunger and instinct. But I don't believe that, because I've seen creatures that were just hunger. That's not what you are." He held the protein bar out. The Culvetha's massive head lowered. Those black eyes came closer, examining the strange human and the strange offering. The creature's breathing had slowed. The aggressive posture had shifted, almost imperceptibly, into something resembling curiosity. Marcus remained perfectly still. The Culvetha's snout extended. Its nostrils flared, processing scent information that its cage had never allowed it to experience before. Food that wasn't corpse stale. Food that was offered, not pushed through a slot. The creature's jaws opened, but it didn't strike. Instead, with an almost delicate precision that no one would have thought possible for something so massive, it took the protein bar from Marcus's outstretched hand. There was a moment of pure, crystalline silence across the entire station. The Culveth chewed slowly, as if tasting something for the first time. And then, it made a sound. Not a roar, not a shriek of rage. A sound that, if a creature like that could make such a sound, might have been interpreted as contentment. In the observation deck above, no one moved. The Vraxian diplomat was the first to speak. What is happening?" Kexthal, the Thrax commander, had gone absolutely rigid. His antennae were twitching with agitation, his mandibles opening and closing soundlessly. But on the main viewing screen, there was no ambiguity. The Culveth, the apex predator, the ultimate weapon, the creature that had defined Thrax supremacy for millennia, was slowly walking in a circle around Marcus Chun. Not hunting, examining, and Marcus, somehow understanding something that the Thrax had never grasped in all their long years of ownership, was speaking. "You're not a weapon," he said to the creature. "You never were. You're just alone." Marcus reached up, and this action made security personnel in 3 different stations move as one, ready to evacuate, and gently placed his hand on the creature's scaled snout. It was still warm from the arena's artificial sun, rough beneath his palm. Real. The Culveth closed its eyes. "You're a person," Marcus whispered. "Someone's person. Maybe your own." For the next hour, Marcus did something that would have been unthinkable if he hadn't already proven it with his actions. He began to engage with the Culveth. He brought food items, none of them weapons, all of them offerings. Piece of fruit, a container of processed protein, water, which the creature drank with surprising gentleness. He spoke to it constantly, his voice steady and calm. Not commands, conversation. The creature, for its part, followed him like something that had been waiting 10,000 years for someone to finally see it. Scientists scrambled. Philosophers debated. The diplomatic corps entered into emergency sessions. But the Thrax? Kexthal watched from the observation deck with something approaching horror, because he understood in that moment what everyone else was beginning to understand as well. The Culveth wasn't a monster because of what it was. It was a monster because of what had been done to it. And if that could be reversed, even partially, even temporarily, then every certainty the Thrax held about power and dominion suddenly seemed fragile. The demonstration never ended in the way it was meant to. Instead, it became something else entirely, a testimony. A conversation that rippled across the galaxy faster than any proclamation the Thrax could have made. The Alliance offered Marcus a full research team, resources, authority to do something that had never been attempted before, true rehabilitation of a genetically engineered weapon. The Culveth, in time, was moved from its cage to a sanctuary. It wasn't freed entirely. It was still dangerous, still volatile, still capable of immense destruction. But it was given something it had never possessed: choice, space, interaction, the presence of another being who saw it as more than just a tool. The Thrax Empire, meanwhile, began a slow decline, not because they were defeated in battle, but because they had lost something far more critical. The fear that held their power together fractured the moment everyone realized. If the Culveth could be seen as more than a weapon, then perhaps so could every other species the Thrax had dominated. But the most profound effect came not from the diplomatic or strategic ramifications. It came from the simple image that had been broadcast across the stars. A small human standing in an arena with a creature that could kill him with a thought, offering it a protein bar. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with respect. With recognition of something shared, loneliness, perhaps, or the need to be seen as more than what others had decided you were. Every species in the galaxy saw something different in that image. The Vraxians saw compassion. The Turellians saw bravery. The Ancients saw wisdom. The mechanical collective saw an attempt at connection across impossible divides. But humans? Humans saw what Marcus had seen from the beginning. They saw someone who had been alone for so very long, finally being offered the simplest of gestures. A gift, not out of fear, but out of recognition. In the end, the Culveth never killed another sentient being. It lived out its days in that sanctuary, painting murals on the walls, a capability that emerged once someone taught it how to hold a brush. It became, improbably, an artist, a symbol. Marcus Chun returned to Earth, but he was never again just a zoologist. He became something else, a bridge between species, a reminder that understanding could sometimes accomplish what weapons never could. And the galaxy learned something it had forgotten in the long years of war and dominion. Sometimes the most powerful thing one being can offer another is not strength. It's recognition. It's the simple act of seeing another consciousness and saying, "I acknowledge you. You matter. You are more than what you've been told you are." The Thrax had kept the Culveth as a weapon for 10,000 years. It took a human with a protein bar to finally set it free. And in that moment, across every observatory and every monitor in the known galaxy, something shifted in how the universe understood itself. Because for the first time, the galaxy truly understood what it meant to be human. Not through conquest, not through dominion, but through compassion given freely to something the rest of the universe had deemed unworthy of kindness. That, perhaps, is the greatest strength of all. If this story of compassion among the stars moved your heart, if you found yourself believing in Marcus Chen and his impossible act of understanding, then subscribe for more tales of humanity's place in the cosmos. Because the best stories aren't about how we conquer the galaxy. They're about how we change it simply by being ourselves. Thank you for listening.